the data streaming to this screen right now, every image and word has almost certainly passed through the silicon of a company most people could not name if you asked them. And increasingly, so has the software running quietly inside the world's largest corporations. It makes almost nothing you would ever buy in a shop, and it courts almost no public attention, and yet it has become one of the most valuable technology companies on the planet. It is called Broadcom, and this is a series about the companies that run the world. Broadcom is a genuinely unusual kind of giant, and to understand it, you have to grasp two things at once. First, it makes the deeply unglamorous but essential chips that move data around, the silicon that routes the internet and connects your devices. And second, it is one of the most relentless acquisition machines in the history of technology, a company that grows less by inventing and more by buying, absorbing, and harvesting other companies. In fact, the Broadcom of today is really the product of a long chain of takeovers, assembled and run by a famously disciplined dealmaker. Rather than a single organic company, it is better understood as a carefully curated portfolio of critical technologies bolted together over years of aggressive acquisitions. Its true product, in a sense, is not any one chip. It is the art of the deal itself, applied with ruthless precision to the technology industry. Start with the chips, because they are everywhere and yet invisible. Broadcom makes the switch and router silicon that sits at the heart of data centers and the internet's backbone, quietly directing colossal rivers of information from one place to another. It also makes the humble combination chips for things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth that sit inside a huge number of the world's phones. When data moves from a distant server to the screen in your hand, there is a very good chance it crossed Broadcom's silicon on the way. And then, artificial intelligence arrived and made all of this suddenly enormously more valuable. Training modern AI requires vast clusters of chips that must talk to each other at blistering speed, and that connective networking is exactly Broadcom's domain. Its switching silicon and the custom AI accelerators it builds for giants like Google have placed it near the very center of the AI boom, spoken of in the same breath as Nvidia itself. But the true genius and the true controversy of Broadcom lies in its business model. Its playbook is to acquire a company that owns a piece of technology customers depend on and cannot easily abandon. Then, it cuts costs hard, often slashing research and staff, focuses ruthlessly on the most profitable customers, and raises prices on those who are locked in. It is, in essence, a private equity style of harvesting, applied to the beating heart of the tech industry. The financial results of this approach are staggering. Broadcom has become one of the most valuable and most profitable semiconductor companies in the entire world, throwing off enormous quantities of cash. Its margins are the envy of the industry, precisely because it targets products where customers have little choice but to keep paying, year after year, whatever the price it decides to charge them. This is why its hunger has reached far beyond chips, into software. If the goal is to own things customers cannot escape, then the deeply embedded software that businesses run their operations on is an almost perfect target. So Broadcom bought the mainframe software maker CA, then the security giant Symantec, and then, most dramatically, the virtualization titan VMware, whose technology runs quietly inside a vast share of the world's corporate data centers. In each case, it acquired something companies had built themselves around and could not simply walk away from. The VMware deal in particular showed the model in its rawest form. After the acquisition, Broadcom sharply raised prices and overhauled how the software was licensed, in ways that left many long-time customers feeling cornered and angry. To Broadcom, it was simply rational business, charging what its essential product was truly worth. To the customers, it felt like a toll suddenly raised on a road they had no choice but to travel. That points to the real nature of its moat, which is entrenchment. Broadcom deliberately owns technologies that are woven so deeply into their customers' operations that leaving would be painful, slow, and risky. Combine that captive position with immense scale and relentless financial discipline, and you have a machine engineered not to delight customers, but to extract the maximum durable value from things they simply cannot do without. It does, of course, have rivals across its many fronts. In networking chips, it battles Marvell, and now Nvidia, which pushed into that space through its own acquisitions. In the equipment world, firms like Cisco compete, even as they buy Broadcom silicon to put inside their own products. But in its chosen niches, the deeply entrenched mission-critical corners of the tech world, Broadcom has made itself extraordinarily difficult to dislodge. So we reach the question this series always asks, of what would break if Broadcom vanished? And the answer is unusually broad. The networking silicon that routes data through the internet, the connectivity chips inside countless phones, and the critical software running inside corporate data centers would all suddenly be in question. Its reach quietly spans so much essential infrastructure that its absence would ripple through both the physical and the digital plumbing of the modern world. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question, in a particularly pointed form. Is it healthy for so much essential technology, the chips that move our data, and the software that runs our institutions, to be concentrated in a company whose explicit strategy is to buy the things people cannot live without and then raise the price? The efficiency is undeniable. But a business model built on the leverage of the indispensable raises real and difficult questions. To be fair, and it genuinely deserves saying, there is a hard logic to what Broadcom does that is not simply predatory. It runs sprawling, sometimes bloated businesses with real discipline, invests heavily where the future actually is, as with AI networking, and has delivered extraordinary returns to those who own it. In a world of undisciplined tech spending, its unsentimental focus on what truly creates value has its own kind of ruthless integrity. And that is the deeper lesson of this particular giant. There is a distinct and formidable kind of power, quite different from invention, in identifying the essential, unglamorous stores of an entire industry, acquiring them, and then patiently collecting. Broadcom understood that you do not always have to build the future to profit enormously from it. Sometimes you simply have to own the pieces of the present that everyone has quietly come to depend upon. So the next time your data races invisibly across the world, or you hear that yet another familiar piece of business software has changed hands, consider the quiet giant behind so much of it. Broadcom is a reminder that some of the greatest fortunes in technology are made not by dreaming up something new, but by calmly acquiring the essential, unglamorous things that everyone already needs and cannot easily give up.